we were asked for some money by the labor department in the state where we operate. We refused to pay that money, and they filed some slap charges against us. In India, typically have a situation where you get a notice from the government. After two non-responses, it becomes automatically a non-bailable arrest warrant. So I was faced with that situation in 2017. He said, "You cannot join Walmart. I now need my Guru Dakshina." And he said, "My Guru Dakshina is you reject the Walmart offer." And we had a supplier who filed a criminal case against me in March 2016. And he was basically claiming some money from Metro because he was creating a lot of noise on social media, wanted to be the first in the class, very academically inclined. And now I realize that these things don't really matter.
So today we have with us Arvind Mediratta. And Arvind has 30 years of experience in FMCG, retail, food services, and consumer durables with top companies like Metro AG, Walmart, P&G, Whirlpool, and Yum Restaurants International. He has strong operating experience in both developing markets like India, China, Asian, and developed market like US, Australia, and Singapore. He has the unique experience of handling both complexity and scale. He has successfully set up and scaled businesses from ground up, like KFC and Walmart in India, and also led huge multi-billion businesses in Walmart USA. Then as CEO and MD for Metro Cash and Carry India, he has accomplished a major turnaround with business turning profitable after posting huge losses for 14 consecutive years. And he's organized or achieved sales growth of more than 75% in last 5 years, and this has been achieved despite a very highly competitive market situation in India, where deep pocket giants like Amazon, Walmart, and Alibaba have been reporting EBITDA losses close to $1 billion annually for last 2-3 years. So Arvind is chairperson of retail and internal trade committee of FICCI. He has also been recognized among various places like Economic Times most promising business leaders of Asia 2020, 25 hottest young executives in India by Business Today in 2006, 50 most powerful people in media, advertising and marketing in India by Pitch, a leading advertising and marketing magazine in 2004, and top 8 marketers in India by Economic Times in 2003. So these firms actually could pick what Arvind was growing into right at early point of time. Arvind is a chemical engineer from IIT Delhi and a management graduate from IIM Calcutta. So thank you, Arvind, for joining us.
Thank you, Rohan, for the very nice introduction. Look forward to this interaction.
And as I shared with you, this show is focused about learning leadership lessons through real life stories. So tell us a bit about your personal life journey beyond all these qualifications and accomplishments.
So I will say I come from a very normal middle class background, born and brought up in Delhi. My father had his own business. So I've always been attracted to being an entrepreneur and wanting to do things on my own. And some of these values have been reinforced when you go to institutions like IIT Delhi or IIM Calcutta, and when you work for companies with very strong value and ethics system. So I'm married right now, of course, as expected. Nothing surprising. Married happily for last 25 years. And I have 2 children. My daughter is working in the US in New York with a bank, and my son is in grade 9. And a lot of my values come from my father, who was my role model. I learned a lot of good values from him. Most important value is about honesty. Honesty is the best policy. And I remember our family moved from Amritsar to Delhi in 1947. And my grandfather used to have a big thriving business in Amritsar with a lot of business dealings with customers who were all over the undivided state of Punjab. At the time of partition, he had to give some money to his suppliers, and he also was supposed to collect about 5-10 lakh rupees from his customers, and he had about 5 lakh rupees of cash. So my great grandfather told him that you should first pay off all your suppliers, and even if you're left with nothing, at least you will live the rest of your life with a clean conscience. So he decided to pay all his suppliers, decided to move with family in Delhi, Obviously, there was no question of recovering any money from people, customers who were based in Pakistan, who had now moved to Pakistan. It
Mm-hmm.
was starting all over again. So one of the important lessons I've also learned, because the story has been told to me so many times by my father and grandfather, that one is about honesty. You need to be honest. Need to live with a clean conscience. The second thing is about, life is full of ups and downs, is full of glorious uncertainties. Therefore need to be rooted. Humility is very important in leadership. So you can't let success go to your head and start floating in the air. So you need to be firmly rooted. Your feet have to be firmly planted on the ground. That's the best advice I can give to people, because I have been, 30 years career. There have been many highs, and of course there have been lows. So what helps you navigate through these tough situations is keeping your, head cool and being firmly planted. And I value relationships. I value relationships. The biggest wealth I earned over the last 30 years of my professional career, and before that, in IIT, IIM school, are the friendships and relationships which I've built. To my mind, that's the wealth I've earned over the last 30 years. And that cannot be replaced by anything else. So it's all about people, it's all about relationships. It's all about, being true to your value system. It's not about taking the shortcut. It's not about cheating people, because I also believe in the concept of karma. If you do something wrong with people, it will come back and haunt you. Always do the right thing. And I also, as a result of that, I also don't give in to blackmail. And there are a lot of stories, where people have tried to blackmail you, but you never give in to blackmail. You stay true to your values. It's tough to do in today's world, but it's something which I will say is something which gives me a lot of satisfaction.
So if it is feasible and practical to share some story of even this blackmail which you're talking about, you need not take names, but how did you manage it? How did you stay centered? What did you feel?
So I'll say, when I took over this job in Metro about 5 years ago, you know how sometimes difficult it becomes for foreign companies to do business in India, because we have a policy on ethics and we will not pay any bribes to get the licenses. So this is a story going back to 2017. And, we were asked for some money by the Labor Department in the state where we operate. We refused to pay that money, and they filed some slap charges against us. And there's a technical thing in the Indian system. So what happened was, in India, you typically have a situation where you get a notice from the government. You respond to it, it's fine. If you don't respond, after two non-responses, it becomes automatically a non-bailable arrest warrant. The government is wanting to, harass you, and this typically happens at the lower and middle level official level. It is not happening at the topmost level. So what they do is they will send you some notices which you never receive, because they were never meant to be delivered. They will later on say it was a wrong address or something like that. You don't receive it, you don't reply it. Second time it happens, it automatically converts into a non-bailable arrest warrant. So I was faced with that situation in 2017. And the simple thing was, I had refused to, pay them the money, which
How
I
did
don't
you
want.
handle? How did you handle, and
Look,
what was going through in your head?
so I was actually luckily in China at that time for a global CEO meeting. So I came to know that now I have a non-bailable arrest warrant in my name. So I decided to, move to Hong Kong, stayed in Hong Kong for about a week. We aligned our global leadership that this is a situation. I had to tell them the reality of doing business in India. Then what we did was, we said, we are not going to, give in to this blackmail. We will fight it out, and we will, file a case in the Bangalore High Court, Karnataka High Court, and we will get this dismissed, because these charges are totally baseless. And some of the charges were that you need to be physically present as a managing director of the company when all your contract staff is being paid all over the country, which is not possible. You have 4,000 or 5,000 contract workers working in the store. You can't be physically around. Secondly, they were saying you cannot do electronic transfer to your account, to your employees' accounts. You need to, register everything. You cannot send them an email with their payslip, etc. It has to be registered. They have to sign that they receive their pay, like it happens in the good old Bollywood movies, I remember, in the 60s and 70s. These are all frivolous charges. So we decided to fight it out. The other thing is, this is a legacy of British days, when the High Court goes into recess. Summer, you have summertime, truncated bench. And typically what happens is, if you get a non-bailable arrest warrant, it's a learning for a lot of us. And you normally get it on a Friday, because then they can arrest you. Saturday, Sunday, the judicial system doesn't work, so you don't get bail. So you spend the week in the lockup. If the bench is working with truncated strength, your case will never come up for hearing. That's a modus operandi, because this matter will be listed number 60, and they will prioritize if they have limited judges working. They'll prioritize major criminal cases like dacoity, rape, murder, etc., terrorism charges. So these matters are not important. So we had to make sure that they don't arrest us. So I was in Hong Kong for a week. Then I moved to Delhi, shifted base to Delhi. We started working with DPIIT, the Department of Promotion Internal Trade. We spoke to Mrs. Sitaraman, who was a commerce minister at that time. We got in touch with the Prime Minister's office. Prime Minister was in Germany, fortunately, at that time. So we got in touch with his, team and told them that you are coming to Germany, asking German companies to invest in India. But the ground reality is that, bright people are being harassed like this. So what you need to do is, you need to set this right. So we had a meeting with the Mrs. Sitaraman. We brought in the loop, the German ambassador to India, right? We also reached out to industry bodies like Indo-German Chamber of Commerce, as Secretary General, saying this is a situation. We got in touch with the Karnataka, I think Industries Minister, Mr. Deshpande. It was Congress government which was in power at that time. And we came to know that the Labor Minister of Karnataka didn't have such a great reputation, and the people under him were doing all kinds of things. Then we also realized that to beat the system, you have to be smart. So while you mobilize all these resources, but there is a case against you, and you have to get the charges dismissed. And if you have to get your case heard, you need to hire a top-notch lawyer. So we hired Mr. Chidambaram. Because of his face value, we were able to get the case heard, and all the charges were found to be frivolous, and they were finally dismissed. And then we had a meeting with the Chief Minister of Karnataka at that time, where he was quite stunned to hear about this, and he apologized, saying this is crazy, that we don't expect our officials to behave like this. He pulled up the Labor Secretary of Karnataka, and for us it was a victory of values, that if you stay true to your values, those 2 months were very harrowing for me, because I was away from my family, living in Delhi, and my family was in Bangalore. Sends out a very strong message that in India, still get your way by following the values and principle which you hold dear, even to blackmail. But this was, it's easy for me to narrate this to you right now. But when I was going through it 2 months, 3 months, it was hell. It was hell, because you know how these things are. Because non-bailable arrest warrant means they can come and arrest you without giving any chance for you to explain your situation. So it was a harrowing time, but in hindsight, I'm very proud of what we did.
So how did it change you as a person?
See, one thing it has changed me as a person is, I will say, I believe in, you hope for the best and plan for the worst. You think anything is possible. You think anything is possible in this country. You will, find things happening which are absolutely bizarre. You will be surprised to see sometimes people indulge in unethical things which are difficult to explain. So I don't get shocked by it anymore. I'll give you another example. When I joined the company, I joined in Feb 2016, and we had a supplier who filed a criminal case against me in March 2016 within a month. I've never met him. I've never dealt with him. And he was basically claiming some money from Metro. And the concerned person was dealing with him. The director on the board told me, you pay him up, because he was creating a lot of noise on social media, Twitter, and tweeting to the Prime Minister of the country, Mr. Modi, the Chief Minister at that time, Mrs. Raje, the German Chancellor, etc., writing to our global CEO. So he was trying to again do blackmail using social media. And the story was portraying is I'm a small supplier, Indian supplier, being taken for a ride by a big German giant called Metro. So David versus Goliath fight. I was told by my director of food business at that time that, why do you want to get into this trouble? You just pay him up. I said, sorry, I don't pay up people just like that. Why don't we do a simple ask the finance team to do account reconciliation and see if we need to pay him money, we'll pay him. So let's do the reconciliation first. So when we did the reconciliation, we found that instead of us paying him, he actually owed us about 1 crore of rupees, demanding 2.5, 3 crores. I said, if I just simply taken you at face value, the company would have lost 3.5 crores. Now that money is getting saved, and I'll rather use that money fighting a legal case against this fellow versus, trying to give in to his blackmail. Because once you give in to a blackmail from a supplier or a landlord, there's no end to it. Then you always keep on getting blackmailed, and you keep on getting you keep on succumbing to pressure. You can never do business in this country. So my learning from these two things is, you don't give in to blackmail. You stay on the path of being right, doing what is right, and ultimately you will triumph. It is not easy to do that, because the Indian legal system is, we got a reprieve, but the matter is still under litigation, because there was even basic of law will tell you that this is not a criminal case. At best, it's a civil case, a dispute about payments. So we also realize one lesson for us is when you onboard suppliers, you need to do a thorough due diligence on their background. We later on discovered that there are a lot of suppliers in India who get into partnership with, multinational, because they don't want to get into this legal mess and, handle all the tweets which go out right now. And social media has made it possible for people to do anything, to, slander your reputation, make all kind of allegations, which are totally baseless. So one has to learn to deal with these things. So, as a CEO, you will say normally, your focus should be on the customer, the people. Of course it is. But in India, it's also very important to manage the environment. When I say manage the environment is, dealing with the government, dealing with suppliers who are unprincipled. You have to deal with all kinds of people. Sometimes it's landlords who try to blackmail you. So you have to make sure that, you don't give in, and the tone has to be set right at the top, because, there is a saying in Hindi, Jaisi Raja, Jaisa Raja, Vaisi Praja. To start doing these things, then you don't have any moral authority to tell your people that we expect you to be compliant and we expect you to show integrity. So this is my big lesson from last 4 or 5 years.
So if you go back little back in time, what would be one or two events which shaped Arvind's personality?
See, I will say that for me, one of the big events was I've been a very avid reader since school and college, right?
Okay.
And typically when you are in college, you are part of the rat race. You want to be part of the rat race. Yeah. In IIT, it was very fashionable. I passed out in '89 to go to the US, and I, like everybody else, applied to 8, 9 universities. I got 9 fully paid scholarships. I was all set to go. I had got admission in Northwestern and Michigan Ann Arbor. I was all set to go to Michigan Ann Arbor. I had the visa on my passport. Okay. But then I realized, why the hell am I doing this? Is it being done because the normal thing is if you get good GPA in IIT, you're supposed to go to US, or is this what I really want to do? I said, no, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to spend all my time in labs, being a scientist or doing a PhD. What I want to do is I like to deal with people. I want to, get into business. So let me, do the CAT exam. And if I get into IIM Ahmedabad or Calcutta, I will take it. And fortunately, I got into, Calcutta and decided to stay put in India. The second thing which happened was, when you have your placement season, again, as part of the rat race, you want to be, the first one to be placed in your batch at day 0 and day 1. And in those days, we didn't have too many options. The consultants and all the investment banks used to started coming to the campuses much later. So the top jobs were the Unilever, the Procter & Gamble, the Citibanks of the world. Yes. So, I got into investment banking. I got an offer from Citibank for investment banking. And I said, but I really wanted to be in marketing. So should I just accept this job because everybody is saying this is the best job on campus that you can get? Or should you get into marketing? And then I said, okay, I'll put an option. Putting an option is risky because at that time, once you have an offer, you put an option, you don't get it, then you stick with your first choice. So I put an option for Procter & Gamble, got through, and then, I have no regrets later on. So again, people called me mad that why did you turn down the Citibank offer? You should have joined Citibank, and that to investment banking. You could have made a lot of money. And, the Citibank job was also offering a lot more money in those days compared to P&G, probably will remember. So, I've always believed that, you need to follow your dreams. Even twice I've done it in my career. I was with P&G in Singapore, came back to India because, I said, I've worked in this setup. I want to work for an Indian professional organization and see how it works out, because you get a lot more freedom to operate in that setup. I have done that, with Walmart in the US, happily placed. And then I took up this job with Metro. And what my boss told me, the head of international business, he said, you must be the only Indian I've met who wants to go back to India and take up this job. You are in Walmart, you are on expat assignment. We really value you and you are going to India. What's wrong with you? So I have always believed that you have one life and you need to lead it the way you want it, not basis what is fashionable or what is perceived to be the in thing or the odd thing.
So what would be, in all this journey, what would you call as a turning point of your life, which was a big turn or a U-turn in some sense? I think you made a lot of changes, fundamental changes, jumps from or U-turns from different jobs. What would you call as the key turning point of your life?
So one of the key turning points in my life was when, I was at P&G. I, was 10.5 years. I decided to leave and come to India because I was not enjoying what I was doing. The roles were getting bigger, the geographies were getting bigger. The work was not very satisfying. Everything had to be tested and retested. So marketing was becoming more of a science than an art. So I said, let me go to a place where you get a lot more freedom. And that is what I was promised by Harsh Mariwala. To join us, we'll give you a lot of freedom. You can take decisions and you don't have to go and take anybody's approval. Want to consult me? You can come and talk to me. Otherwise, you're free to take decisions from an environment where everything. I remember I launched a brand in those days in Asia Pacific region. And I had to get almost 100 approvals on a piece of paper. Launch that brand across 8, 10 countries, all the countries in Southeast Asia, Australia, China, etc. From that culture where you had to get approval from so many people and alignment, and that's one of the challenges working in a multinational setup in a matrix organization, to an Indian setup where the owner or the promoter says, you guys, you decide what you want to do. I was quite shocked. It was a shock for me that how can he just say that you decide what you want to do. And one of the things I also learned from him is humility. Here was a man who had set up this company called Marico. And in my interaction with him, all he asked me was about my family background. He said, you have worked in PNG, you've been to IIT, IIM, I can trust your analytical skills, your marketing skills. I have no questions. I just want to check your value system. One of the things which I learned from him is, when I look at hiring people, I look at their value system. The other thing he told me very openly, he said, I am a very simple commerce graduate from Sydenham. You have all the fancy degrees. So you come to, I don't have too much of, the fancy degrees, but I have a lot of common sense and business acumen. So you come to me only when you have some, serious challenges in your, when you're running the business. There are two things which I learned from this whole interaction. One is actually three things. Values are very important when you're hiring people. Second is humility. There was a man, who has set up this. He was very affluent, a big industrialist. He has a humility to say that, you are more qualified in terms of degrees, not in terms of leadership, of course. And the third thing was, empowerment. I truly learned the meaning of the word empowerment when I worked with him, because in a multinational, you will talk about empowerment all the time. A lot of times, there's so much of the decision making is quite centralized. You have to go to the corporate headquarters for approval. But here was a man, he was sitting in the same office and he said, you don't even need to come to my floor to get approval. Once a week, we will have lunch and then we can discuss if you want to discuss something with me or want to pick my brains for something. So that was when I truly learned the meaning of empowerment. And honestly, I tell you, if I look at my 29, 30 years career, those 2 years which I spent were very satisfying because I could take decision and I could move on. Sometimes in a multinational setup, and a lot of people may not like me saying this, a lot of your time is spent aligning the headquarters on the opportunity in India, the right strategy for India, then people move, then you start all over again. Indian professional companies, in that sense, they offer the best of all the worlds because they offer you a great environment, they empower you. Once you develop the trust, of course, trust has to be earned. And now also a lot of Indian companies are paying very well. I will say these were two of my, two big turning points in my career.
So let's go back to your childhood a bit. So what was your biggest childhood challenge?
So I think I've been always very ambitious, always, wanted to be the first in the class, very academically inclined. And now I realize that these things don't really matter. You see a lot of people around you who have done very well in life because they have great EQ, social skills, emotional intelligence. I can talk about a lot of people who excel, who have done very well. A lot of times you come across your friends and you meet people who will say, why did this guy get promoted? I was more qualified than him. And, my view on these things is that some of those people may not be the best in terms of their IQ, may not be the most intelligent people in the organization, but they know how to lead teams. They know how to inspire people. They have excellent EQ, which is in India, at least, is underestimated, the importance of EQ. We think the smart people are the ones who are, smart questions and who have all the answers. But, the best leaders, if you look at around the world, are not the smartest leaders. They've got into those jobs because they are great with people. They know how to inspire people. They provide clarity. They provide, you can trust them. They inspire trust. You feel very comfortable talking to them, so and I can name some people. There is a guy, of course, Doug McMillan of Walmart is one such person. He has the best EQ in the whole world, according to me. You spend time with him, you spend 30 minutes with him, he can make you feel very special. So some people have that quality. I remember there's a quote from Napoleon that leader is a dealer of hope. And there are some leaders like that who make you feel good about you. And then there are some people who, make you feel that you are good for nothing. So I would like to be a leader who makes people feel good about themselves. And I can recently relate to what has happened in cricket because I use a lot of analogies from the world of sports and politics. If you look at Ajinkya Rahane, the same team which got thrashed about a week ago or maybe 10 days ago has won this game, the second test match today, with 8 wickets. He's an unassuming person, he's not in your face. On the other hand, we had a leader who was very passionate, aggressive, and if you read the comments subtly between the lines, people are saying that, with Virat, you're always on the tenterhooks. You don't know whether you're in the team or outside the team. Mr. Gavaskar has made some comments about him, saying even a player like Ashwin is never settled because he's not sure about his place in the team, and he has paid a price for speaking his mind out. But the same team, despite losing so many people, Shami was not there, Kohli himself was not there, has been able to thrash the same Australians. And a week ago, people were saying that we will lose the series 4-0. That's an example of leadership, a leader, great leader who makes people feel good about themselves and brings out the best in them. It is not good enough for you to be the best. I think it's good for your team to be the best, to give their best. You need to create that empowering and energizing environment where people feel empowered, they feel energized.
So what would be one of the biggest failure or setback that you had, which you turned around?
Good question. So honestly, the case which I talked about initially came as a big blow. I didn't know what to do. That, now you didn't join this company to get arrested for standing up to you. So it's a good example of, how do you deal with adversity? You turn it around because, first thing when you are in this situation, you want to think when you're working for a multinational is explaining the situation to the headquarters, because normally the human tendency is if there is a case against you, you must have done something wrong. Yes. So how do you tell them what the facts are? How do you get their confidence? Because we did I talked about what we did with the external people, the Indian government, the Karnataka government, the Indian government, the German ambassador. But I had also a lot of work to do with
internally
managing the headquarters in Germany. What the situation is. You also don't want to badmouth the country and scare them from investing in India. At the same time, you want to tell them what is going on, what's the ground reality. I was very fortunate to have a great boss at that time, a German who had worked in Bain for all his life as a senior partner. He had joined as the Asia head about, I think, 6 months before me. So he was very understanding. He told me one thing which is very important. He says, keep the emotions out. When you have a problem, keep the emotions out. Start putting down the facts. Put the facts on a piece of paper. So one of the lessons I've learned is when you deal with these adversities, you need to start putting the facts, start separating the emotions from the facts. A lot of times emotions get the better of you and you start making some mistakes. He told me, please, facts are your best friend. His, I think, favorite quote is, facts are your best friend. So put down the facts on a piece of paper. And, facts cannot be only in your head. You have to put it down on a piece of paper. Explain the chronology of events to everybody. So that's one of the lessons I've learned. In India, or actually in today's age, very few people write things, on a piece of paper, So once you start putting down things on paper, you get a lot of clarity. I will also say that, the other challenge is on culture. When I moved to Walmart US from India, I thought I was, cat's whiskers. I had set up the cash and carry business for Walmart, done very well. It was growing very well. And then you go to the US. And then again, humility hits you because you realize the scale of those operations. It's a $300 billion business. It was $300 billion in those days. Okay. And then you realize that, you're handling Texas, which is one of the most important markets. And you don't know much about the American culture because what we know about the American culture is what we see in the movies, right? Living there is a different thing. And each state has its own challenges and peculiarities. So you look at Texas. So Texas is, the Lone Star State, or in a way, it's very similar to Punjab. Everything is big in Texas. That's what they say. Okay. And you start learning the culture. So one of the things I had to do was to put aside my ego and learn from even the store manager or a department manager or market manager or, regional vice president and try to listen to what they were telling me. Because, I don't eat beef. If you talk about meat, the biggest seller is beef, pork. I don't consume these products. So you have to learn, the culture. There's so many things, of course, now Indian society is also getting westernized and a lot of American influence. But the true meaning of Halloween, and then there is again, it's not one society. In Texas, you have people with mixed background. You have the white Caucasian Americans, you have Hispanics. Hispanics behave differently, whether they are first generation or third generation. Third generation is more assimilated into the American culture. You have the African Americans who have a different view of things. You have Asians also a lot. So, because if you look at cities like Dallas and Houston, they have a huge population of Asians, especially Indian Americans, right? You go to South Texas, you have more Hispanics who are first generation, right? So you learn a lot of new things about the culture, and even bakery. You may think what is important about this bakery job is one of the departments, maybe 100 departments in a super center, but you realize for Hispanics, bakery is the most important thing. It is a footfall driver. So if you have people in your bakery department who can make these great cakes, they like a lot of color in their cakes, you can bring a lot of Hispanic customers into the store. So it's a lot of learning, and you have to be humble, and you need to just observe and ask a lot of questions.
So my another question was, what has been the biggest dilemma you ever faced? What was the most difficult decision of life? Beyond whatever you've covered, is there anything else to do or not to do, etc.? A lot of thoughts. I think you've got a lot of such decisions after 9 calls deciding not to go to US or maybe shifting jobs. But what would you call as the biggest dilemma where you kept thinking maybe for a few days and then finally took a call? But
I think the last 2 career changes, I had a lot of dilemma in my head. So I will talk about Yum. I was in Yum doing very well. We had relaunched KFC. It was on a roll,
I
from a
remember
brand which
that.
had failed in its first, yeah,
Mm.
35, it was to be scaled up. We had gone to Hawaii for a meeting. This was the officer group, top 75 people in the company around the world. So it's a great company. They also invite your spouse and your family. You go there, you enjoy it. And my, the chairman of the company, the managing director and CEO, David Novak, who's a legend in his own right.
I
So
remember.
he told my wife,
Yeah.
so he told my wife, your husband is a star, make sure he doesn't go away. Because at that time there was a change, and, some people went because of compliance issues. I was only one there who was still there in the company. And, everybody was looking up to me to make sure there was continuity in the business.
Okay.
So we come back, and then, I get an offer from Walmart, which again is very exciting because retail, that was a buzzword in the 2006-7 era, getting into Walmart, and two parents with deep pockets. And then there was Yum, where I'd already established a lot of credibility, and they wanted me to continue. They even offered me a role as global chief marketing officer of KFC based in Dallas. They even promised, fast track American citizenship. So it's a very attractive thing. And I was in dilemma whether I should continue with Yum or take up this exciting opportunity with Walmart. So it was not an easy decision. And, it became very difficult because I used to work with a guy called Mickey Pant, Mukesh Pant, who's a legend in his own right. He was earlier with Unilever. He was a global CMO of Reebok, and then he joined Yum as a global chief marketing officer. And then he also ran Yum's international business. He's a great guy. If you have interacted with him, he's a great guy, full of wonderful lessons from life and business and leadership. So he was in a way my guru. And the Indian system, the guru, and you have the disciples. So first time in my life, the kind of interaction I had a great bonding with him. He said, you cannot join Walmart, I now need my guru dakshina. So I've never heard this word till then in the corporate world. Nobody asked for guru dakshina. And he said, my guru dakshina is you reject the Walmart offer. So it can't get bigger than that. Unfortunately, I didn't pay attention. I took up the offer with Walmart, though it was a very, very difficult decision. On one hand, you have great equity and reputation in this company. The global chief marketing officer wants you to move to US and take over the job of global chief marketing officer for KFC brand. The chairman of the company is telling your wife, your husband is a star, make sure he doesn't leave us. And then you want to go and join a company where you don't know the people, but you think that is an exciting sector, and it's based in India. And, he even told me, do you want to be a big fish in a, Mickey Pant told me, you want to be a big fish in a big pond called the world, or big fish in a small pond called India. I think those words still echo in my head. And if there is something that, sometimes I wonder what I did and why I did it. I sometimes feel that maybe, in hindsight, it may have been probably better to have continued with Yum. Because the retail sector in India has been through a lot of ups and downs. There have been a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
There are big boys competing here, a lot of money being poured in, no line of sight of profitability for many companies. So Metro has been profitable for last 3 years, but
Mm.
a lot of money being, and the market is seeing a lot of consolidation because Yum had a very unique culture. One of the things I unique about these great companies is their culture, and they had this unique reward and recognition culture. So they would tell you one thing that when you go to a restaurant, you can always find five things which are not right, but you don't focus on those five things which are wrong. Focus on that one thing which is right, and compliment the restaurant team for that one thing which is right. And to my mind, that's a very invaluable lesson. In India, typically we tend to be very skeptical and we are always focused on fault finding.
Correct.
I remember, even in Walmart, Sam Walton, the legendary founder of Walmart, he would always say focus on good finding versus fault finding. So he has some rules about, I talked about EQ and people skills. So he put down some 5 or 6 basic rules. The first rule is very interesting. First rule was say a good morning to every employee around you, even though you may not be feeling good morning yourself.
Okay.
So that's rule number one. Number two is address everyone by their first name. Nothing can be more embarrassing and demotivating for a person that you are greeting them and you don't remember their name, right? Imagine I'm talking to you or you are talking to me and you don't remember my name. It's very embarrassing.
Yeah.
And the third thing was, is always focus on good finding versus fault finding. And the fourth thing he said was always give a compliment to people. Even if there is no particular reason to do so. Very difficult for us in India to do that. If somebody is doing well, we normally have a tendency to pull that person down. But he always said, give people a compliment, even if there's no particular reason to do so. Make people feel good about themselves. A very interesting lessons around people management from legendary founder of Walmart, Sam Walton.
So one thing I wanted to ask you is that as you shared various stories, most of the places really wanted you, valued you, selected you in different ways. So I want you to go one layer below that. So what caused all of that? Because I want the audience to deconstruct and create that kind of value and success in their own lives wherever they are. So what would be some of those things which you say run common in all these successes?
Okay.
What was the
I will say first of all, I'm very apolitical. I hate politics. I'm a very straightforward person in your face. So I will tell you exactly what I feel about something. So you don't have to second guess me. Okay. Some people may not like it, but they know that if I've told them something, if I say good job, I really mean great job. Okay. I will not, unfortunately, I don't say to people great job and I know they have messed up. So when I say a good job, I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. So I'm pretty straightforward and candid in my, interaction with people. You don't have to second guess me. So I'm very apolitical. I hate politics. The second thing, which I think is about people, I really feel happy. I believe in having around you great people whom you can then blindly trust and let them run the show. Okay. And I have had the privilege of working with many such people, who are, you can say, corporate captains across different companies who are leading the companies now. So one of the things I pride myself is on how many people who have worked with you have become so successful in their lives. A lot of CEOs, some have even gone beyond that, So I pride myself on identifying talent, nurturing them, grooming them, and then empowering them so that they can perform and deliver great results. So that's a second thing, because I think you cannot achieve anything on your own. You need a great team behind you. I gave you an example of cricket. Virat Kohli may be a great, cricketer, but with his individual brilliance, he cannot win the matches. He needs a great bowling squad. He needs a great fielding team. He needs a great wicket keeper. He needs other batsmen also to perform. So you can't only be, so it cannot be a superstar and have and assume everything will fall. You need a great team around you. It's not about great individuals. It's a great team, right? I also spend a lot of time trying to make sure a lot of times there are functional silos. The merchandising function will not speak to operations. They're always in conflict, like marketing and sales in FMCG. So how do you bring people together and make sure they work collaboratively? Because if you work collaboratively, you can achieve great results. So that's something that, and a lot of people have come back, and even I've been a tough boss. I'm a tough taskmaster. They still come back because they know that at the end of the day, I'm very fair. I will make sure people are. I believe in betting on people. If that's the right word. I take bets on people. I don't. While I obviously take bets on business ideas, I also bet on people. I don't wait for the person to be fully ready before you promote them, because nobody can be fully ready. I know there are a lot of people who say, you need to do this and you need to do that before you move to the next level. But honestly, I believe that if the person has innately great qualities, you can always promote them. You should back people. Though recently, I also learned one thing which is coming from Walmart. They would always say, you trust but verify. Don't have blind trust in people.
In desert, trust Allah but I or camel, something like that.
So trust is important, but they say always verify. But that's my DNA is more trust. You like someone, you've tested them a couple of times, you trust them. And then of course, sometimes you face disappointment because people may not live up to that trust.
Yeah.
But I fundamentally believe in trusting people. If I trust you, I will believe everything that you tell me. I'm not going to go behind your back and check out what you're doing and whether you're telling me is truth or not. So, I've shared with you, some other people have this view, trust but verify. The other thing is, I'm very rooted. I don't think, you can call, shouldn't, meaning I think I'm pretty rooted. I'm not sitting there. My feet is firmly planted on the ground. So I can connect with people. The best compliment I got when I was in the Walmart US during my evaluation, they said, my boss told me, was a American lady running, half of the US business, 100 billion, 150 billion dollar business, that you're one guy who can connect with the bakery person in the store in, this remote part of Texas to the global CEO, Doug McMillan. So you can, change the topic of conversation so much that you can have a meaningful conversation with both of them, which I thought was the best compliment I've got. So it's probably the best compliment I got, ability to connect with people across levels, right? I was interviewing with Yum this was in 2005. And there was an American global chief marketing officer before, Mickey Pant, who was interviewing me for this role. And, he said, you are great, but I have to give you one feedback. I said, yes, I would love to know your feedback. He said, in the conversation, you always talk about I. This is in 2005, beginning of 2005. Remember, retail is not a me business. Retail is a we business. It's not about me. It's about we. That's a lesson I've taken to heart. And I always, that's one of the biggest lessons, because when you are in a FMCG world, you believe you're a great marketeer and you can produce, fantastic ads which will grow the business. You don't think so much about the team, right? In sales, you probably still think about the team, but when you are in brand management, you think you can be that superstar marketing director or brand manager who can grow the business because you are super sharp with identifying customer insights and coming out with the right product combination, etc. But retail is about we. And I have been now in the retail industry since 2005, 15 years. So it's always about we. Retail is never about an individual. And great retail leaders always carry the team along with them. That's the biggest lesson. And I think that was a very, very good feedback. I also remember one more thing I got feedback, which is sometimes, these things make you change the way you work and your behavior. This was in Procter & Gamble. It was with a colleague who was senior to me in a different department. He says, you're, very, very smart, but I have noticed one thing about you. I said, what? Please tell me. He said, you start all your sentences with but. We are doing this, but we want to do this, but. So it sounds very, negative. You need to change this. Make sure you never start your sentences with but. And I've tried to correct myself after that. I got this feedback sometime in 1994 or 95. I think it was one of the most invaluable feedbacks I've got. One was this, and second is about retail is not me, retail is we. Right. And I think the other thing I would like to say is these American companies are good at creating jargon. So in Yum, they would when you ask them the definition of a great leader, they will say smart with a heart. So heart is about connecting with people. And then I remember I was picked up for a program with Walmart, which is for the top rated officers, global officers, the 3-year program. And then they, took it to a different level. They said great leaders exhibit 3 qualities. They need to have 3 things: head, ability to think, strategize, analyze, right? Provide clarity to the people below you, what needs to be done to win. So head, heart, which is what Yum also said, heart is about connecting with people and making those emotional connections. And third is guts. Yes. They added a third dimension called guts, which is ability to take risk and take decisions.
Ah.
I admire people. There are a lot of people. When I now evaluate people, I say, okay, do you have the head? You have the heart, or you have the guts? Because if you have head and the heart but no guts, you may not be very effective. On the
Mm,
other hand, if you're very gutsy but don't apply your head, you know what happens in cricket. If you're a cricketer who's trying to hit a six of every ball, it
mm,
will lead to disaster. Same thing in
mm,
business. So you need to have the right combination of all three: head, heart, and guts. Again, if you're very smart but no heart, you cannot connect with people. So it will you'll hit your peak very soon. Or you
mm.
might be smart, very gutsy, but no people connect. So you need
Very.
all three. I think this is one of the most important lessons I've learned in my life with two
Mm.
great companies, Yum and Walmart. It's about smart with a heart, and they took another dimension to it in Walmart: head, heart, and guts.
So any ritual or a particular hobby or activity that you follow over the years that has helped you?
I think I try to de-stress myself by listening to watching a lot of movies.
Okay.
So I watch a lot of movies, both Bollywood and Hollywood movies. So you can, I do binge watching. During the pandemic, I've been doing a lot of binge watching of all the OTT shows and movies, which I have not. Even during flight, a lot of people tend to sleep. I use that time to catch up on all the movies. I can watch on US flights probably 3 or 4 movies each sector. So I like to watch a lot of movies. Second thing I try to do is to, food. I'm very fond of food.
Mm,
So try out all the new restaurants which open now. That has not been very easy in the pandemic, because last 9-10 months we have not eaten out at all. We
okay.
started ordering now recently from Cumin, the Taj, the dine-in app or delivery app,
Mm,
but we have not been very, I will say, adventurous in terms of ordering or delivering or
mm,
eating out in the last 10 months. But I love to travel, and love to eat out and try out new places. And
mm,
some of the most amazing, one of the best things I liked about Texas was a cuisine that you would get in Texas. South Texas, you would have authentic, Mexican food. It's not Tex-Mex, it's authentic. So you
mm,
go to places like Bronzeville, or in South Texas, which is very close to the Mexican border, or
mm,
El Paso. El Paso is again very close to the Mexican border. You would get some of the most delicious Mexican cuisine and most authentic, because
mm.
that's also very spicy like Indian cuisine, and they use a lot of cheese.
Yeah.
Again, I had a very interesting incident. I remember I was in El Paso with one of my team members
Mm,
visiting stores. And then I was just telling him, the Mexican food is very bland. It's not spicy at all. And then he said, okay, let me, test you. So
mm,
he ordered something. He told something in Spanish to the server, and he brought in habanero. Habanero is probably the most spicy chili that you can get,
mm,
or chiliest chili.
mm,
And I had that, and then I needed a lot of ice cream to take care of the heat, and
mm,
which went through my body. So some of these interesting incidents I can't forget, because I like to, I would like to work hard, but you know, also not party hard, but unwind, equally harder when I'm traveling. And traveling with people is a great stress buster, because that's when you get to know people. I get to know people very well, and they're traveling with you together on these long trips. It
mm,
could be a trip to Mumbai, or it could be one of the rural markets in the country, or it could be to another country. You travel together,
mm.
you get to know people much, much better as individuals. When you are traveling together, you're eating together and things like that. So I really, I'm happy that I'm part of retail, because in retail, you get to meet a lot of people.
Yeah. So what are you now looking forward in life after all this? What are you looking forward
I'm saying, I think I look forward to retiring in a few years' time. I haven't had the time to visit the world around with my family,
to? Mm-hmm.
right? So I would like to, maybe retire in few. When I say retire, I will never retire as such.
I know.
But when it's like, sometimes the pressure of daily PNL gets to you.
Mm,
You want to get into big, larger strategic roles. The
mm,
day-to-day pressure of delivering numbers, quarterly numbers, and those things. Maybe 3-4 years down the line, you want to get away from all that. Focus on mentoring people, mentoring teams, sharing your experience with them, because you see very young, you see a lot of young talent in startups in Bangalore and other parts of the world,
mm,
but you sometimes find that they can do much better if they focus also a lot more on people. Because many of these startups, they have brilliant ideas, in terms of intellect, in terms of IQ, fabulous. But sometimes you feel that they don't have the kind of culture which is needed to build a great organization.
Yes.
Right? The culture sometimes is not so great. So how can you help mentor these companies to build a great culture? And you see a lot of churn. If you look at all the companies that I work with, which are great companies, Walmart or P&G, the churn, or Yum, the churn is very limited because they have such great people. Even after leaving these companies, I'm talking such great things because of the the culture and what you learn. So how can the Indian startups focus on creating great organization, not just great GMV and great valuation? The focus is always on valuation, but a great company goes beyond valuation. Valuation is outcome of what you do. You want to build a business which sustains. You need a great team, you need a great organizational culture, and you need great people around you who enjoy being in the company, who are not there because they have some ESOPs and stock options which they want to cash out, make some money, and then they will move on. So this is one of the gaps that I see in the Indian startup ecosystem. It's all about we are here to solve a problem, and they have they tend to take themselves less seriously. So I've heard the language of some of these startup founders. It's like if before their company started doing business, the world was suffering a lot. It's not so. There have always been companies which have been focused on delivering on customer needs. So take yourself less seriously is my advice to some of these people, because they say, oh, we are solving this problem of humanity. So sometimes they have these grandiose visions of that they are the messiahs for this world, and what they're doing will change the world. I understand that, but I think they need to focus more on people and the culture in their companies, and that's something that I would like to get into at some point of time.
So I think this whole a valuable journey of head, heart, and guts, connecting all of that, as well as through all these companies, you've imbibed a whole lot of culture building and leadership, and I think what all you shared in today's interview would be extremely valuable to anyone who's looking at developing them as a leader to next level. And I wish you all the best for basically spreading this, all that which you have collected, spreading that wisdom to a lot more leaders in the ecosystem of this world.
Thank you, Rohan. It was a pleasure interacting with you, and all the best to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.